All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to All Sports, All Plays weekly wrap-up show. My name is Craig. Along with me is Shane. Shane, how are you recovering this week from last week?
You know what? I am in much better mindset for this. I think my internet might have been a touch faster than yours. That's why I popped on here a little bit quicker. But you know what? Last week, I appreciate the fact that you were able to carry it. I hope that there was a couple opinions that came out that didn't quite embarrass myself too much. I could tell you the fish fry was fantastic. The weekend was great, but I haven't touched a single drop of alcohol since.
Yeah, those parties can kind of get a little out of hand once in a while. I'll be having my own in a couple weeks here in the great state of Michigan. That'll be a lot of fun. Lots of golf and grilling out. I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, and you deserve it. You know, I get one last weekend in and enjoy it, and you got a lot of sports going on right now, so there'll be a lot of stuff on the streaming going on throughout that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Before we get we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. Before we get into tonight's topics, want to make sure that everybody, if you're tuning into the stream, got a few people logging on right now. Thank you so much for joining us. First and foremost, want to make sure that you like and share the stream. Helps out not only us, and we really love doing this, but it helps out the All Sports All Plays Network. Like and share the stream, and don't forget to follow and or subscribe depending on what platform you're on. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And if you want to follow All Sports All Plays on any of those platforms, on Facebook, it's at All Sports All Plays, Twitter at ASAP Network 1, and on YouTube, just search ASAP Sports Network, and you can find all the great content that is here on All Sports All Plays Network. A lot of great stuff throughout the week. Always something. If you're whatever you're into, there's fighting shows, there's betting shows, there's the morning and afternoon shows. Lots of great stuff here, but definitely check us out on all those platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I just learned something from you too, Craig, because I didn't realize you could go live on Twitter. So
you can.
Well, hey, I just learned that. I am very excited to know that. But yeah, it's exciting to be back for another week. And this week, we have something that is near and dear to both of our hearts, and that's college football that's getting started. And we kind of got week 0 that has happened here. And I don't know how you feel about week 0. Like, to me, I think if you're going to have week 0, you might as well have a few more games. And, you know, like, I think it would have been a lot cooler to just start it on the Thursday, the way that most of the proper conferences are doing it. But we did have a little bit of Big Ten action going on Saturday. And it was happening out there in Ireland. Pretty wild scene when the internet went down at the stadium and they were giving out free beer and alcohol. Wouldn't have been a bad game to be at.
Yeah, you know, all the Nebraska fans were all lined up. I saw a picture on Twitter, and it was all Northwestern Nebraska fans lined up right at the bar. They're waiting. They got free beer. I mean, what better is college football if you can get free beer?
Right. And you know what? And John might be right on Facebook saying that he's more surprised that Vandy put up 63. That is pretty absurd, thinking that they could go ahead and put that up there. But I would say the question to you is, did the internet really go down, or was the heat from Scott Frost's hot seat burning so bad that they had to refresh everybody with some cold beer?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Is that I want to know if you're Nebraska, in this case, Scott Frost's seat is hotter than it's ever been, and he had his success while he was at UCF. Yeah, nobody can deny that, how much of an impact he had in that school. But also look at the competition they were playing against, the style in which he was playing on the field, offensively, defensively. But when you take that and you try to adapt it to a Big Ten, and you're not recruiting the same type of traditional Big Ten players, I think this is kind of what you see. I would go out on a limb, and this is hot take or not, doesn't really matter. I would see Scott Frost is Nebraska's Rich Rodriguez.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right there. And that's probably a name that still doesn't feel good coming out of your mouth, that Rich Rodriguez. Well,
not even a little bit.
At some point, people will get over it. You know, people got over the Black Cat in Boston and, you know, like the GOAT in Chicago. So people get over these things eventually. But I understand as a Michigan fan, that's very, very difficult for you. And I appreciate you being like brave enough to say that name live on air.
Yeah, it hurts a little bit every time I say it. But going back to Nebraska, in now their 5th year under Scott Frost, with the loss to Northwestern, they're now 5-21 in 1-score games.
Mm-hmm.
And those, imagine that, like, even if you're mediocre at closing games, you should be doing better than 5-21. And obviously, clearly there's something going on there in Nebraska that they're not making those adjustments over a 4.5-5-year period to win at least more than 5 of those games.
Well, and yeah, even more absurd. And like you talk about making adjustments over the course of the year, that's what a coaching staff should be doing. But I believe it's a very similar record, and don't quote me exactly, but I think it's 3-26 if Nebraska's losing at halftime is what Scott Frost's record is there. And that means you can't even adjust in game, let alone when you have a whole week of practice. I would say that he probably has the best quarterback that he's had the entire time he's been there. I mean, people want to talk about Alec Martinez. He's a great athlete. Do what you got to do. But Casey Thompson, that is a guy that was a starter for the Texas Longhorns, who have not been what they're supposed to be over the last 10, 15 years, basically since Vince Young got out of there. But this was still a highly touted quarterback. And this was a guy that I was shocked when he went to Nebraska. I thought maybe he knew something that we didn't, but it seems like more of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm bringing up Scott Frost's overall record here, but I did not get a chance to watch a ton of the game. However, I did find it astounding that not only did Nebraska blow 1 double-digit lead, they blew 2 double-digit leads. And I don't know if that's more of do you think that's more credit to Northwestern, or is that more of a detriment about Nebraska trying to hold a lead?
I think I'm going to give a little bit of credit to the Northwestern coaching staff and their head coach. His name escapes me, but he has kind of been around there. They've done some nice things there. Last year was kind of a down year for them, but in recent years, Northwestern is basically the Vanderbilt of the Big Ten, right? They're a smart school that deserves to be there because of the logistics, and they're so close to Chicago that why wouldn't the Big Ten want them to be there? But they're really not the athletic powerhouse. So for him to be able to do what he does with the guys that he brings in, I think is great. But it just shows. There you go, Pat. Yeah, there you go. John is on top of it today. Yeah, John is on top of it today. John, we appreciate you. But yeah, for him to be able to do all that stuff, I think it's fantastic. The way that the game played, again, I didn't see all the game either. I saw bits and pieces of the first half and then kind of drifted away in the second half. But the Northwestern quarterback seemed like he could move the ball around, and that offense wasn't as stagnant as you would expect them to be. Yeah, a little bit of credit to Northwestern and a lot of thumbs down to Nebraska. And I apologize to all Nebraska fans. I don't know. If you're a Nebraska fan and a Cleveland Browns fan, you might as well just quit sports. Be done with it. Get it over with.
I have a very good friend that's a diehard Nebraska football fan. And, when that hire was made, it was well lauded as a great move. And watching him go through this, I'm honestly very surprised that Scott Frost has gotten such a long leash of having such an awful such an awful coaching record at Nebraska versus, I believe, Bo Pelini was getting consistently 9-win seasons, and they said, no, that's not good enough. We're going to fire you and then bring in the hometown guy that we know is going to put us over the top. And they've gone completely backwards.
Yeah, it's a bunch of boosters at Nebraska that for some reason they think that they're living in the 90s and we're still running the wishbone. And those days are long gone. You joined a conference that plays defense. You joined a conference that actually has real powerhouses in it. The Big 12 is a conference that they owned for many of years. I really didn't understand why they made the move to the Big 10, but they might have just been ahead of the curve because it seems like everybody's trying to make that move to the Big 10 now. But they're a Big 12 team. They're built to be a Big 12 team. They don't recruit like a Big 10 team. They don't recruit like anybody else around them. They want to be Ohio State, and they're basically not even the Ohio Bobcats.
Yeah, that's a good point. Here's real quick, everybody that's kind of tuning in here. Really appreciate it. Throw your comments down below. We love interacting with everybody. John Suggs is on top of it with us today. Appreciate him. But Nebraska's coach, the record year by year, Scott Frost, first year 4-8. Then he improves to 5-7. Everyone thinks, okay, cool. This is where winning seasons are going to start. And then we had the COVID season. So 3-5 there. And then last year was 3-9. So at Nebraska, he's 15-30 and hasn't even sniffed a bowl appearance.
Yeah. Does it have their Big 10 record in that?
Let me see. This is on Sports Reference. I don't have it. I don't have the total right here, but I mean, it's not good.
Yeah. Do you think that there's no way he has double digit Big 10 wins, right? Like we're talking like maybe 5, 6.
It can't be much. It really can't be much. He has not been able to really do a lot. And even then, even in the non-conference games, they have not performed very well at all.
Right.
They haven't performed well at all in any of their conference games. But kind of transitioning that a little bit into another Big Ten school. We were just kind of mentioning it earlier, my Michigan Wolverines. And with that situation going on, you got a team that's coming off a Big Ten championship, a team that finally got over the hump, beating Ohio State 42-27 in the Big House, winning the Big Ten title, but then meeting an unstoppable Georgia team in the college football playoff. Now this year you come in, it's the senior Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy, the 5-star quarterback recruit, and who's going to be the starting quarterback? Well, Jim Harbaugh has come out and said that they're really not going to name a starting quarterback.
Right.
Cade's going to start week 1. And then JJ is going to start week 2 at Hawaii, who just got 63 rung up on him by Vandy, as you mentioned earlier. We're just licking our chops at that one for sure. But so being kind of an outside, I'll leave my opinion for a little bit later, but being an outsider's perspective here, what do you make of the Michigan quarterback situation?
So when I first saw it, and I am very curious of your opinion of this, especially with what my thought is going to be. I saw that they were going to start McNamara week 1, and I was like, you know what? That makes sense. He's the senior. When I've seen them play, I actually think that he's been the better of the two quarterbacks, in my opinion. But then I saw that they were going to have McCarthy play week 2 at Hawaii, and I thought, okay, so Harbaugh wants McCarthy to be the starter because every fan and every single media outlet is going to hang on to what they've seen today. And what they've seen today is Michigan hanging 85 on Hawaii. And they're going to think that this guy's the best quarterback that's ever put on a Michigan uniform. And he's going to start the Big Ten season for them. And I'm not sure that that's the best thing for Michigan. I think it's a fantastic thing as a Michigan State fan. But I don't That's the way that it lines up to me. That's the way that I look at it from 10,000 feet in the air and just trying to like pinpoint where I'm looking at. But as a fan, like me, you've probably watched more downs than I have of Michigan football and all the snaps and where you're at. So how do you feel about this?
I look at it in a couple different ways. The fact that JJ McCarthy, yes, is the 5-star quarterback that is the guy that everybody's pining for right now. And I completely understand how that looks for the outside. Okay, you got a 5-star quarterback in the age of everyone transfers if they don't get playing time. They're just, how are you going to keep him happy? But then you kind of have to remember that Cade McNamara was also a 4-star quarterback. And I don't remember exactly who played ahead of him his first year in 2020. But I distinctly remember that when it was Joe Milton. So Joe Milton came in and was the guy. And then, Michigan. So here's the thing. Joe Milton was the guy. Then everyone's
there was the other
McNamara.
Guy too. Shea Patterson.
So Shea Patterson was also a quarterback before that as well. They had the thing about Harbaugh, he has not been able to recruit a quarterback since Andrew Luck fell into his lap at Stanford.
Right.
So for being an NFL quarterback, he's not been able to recruit those big guys except for the upcoming one that's supposed to be coming to Michigan in the next, or I should say committing to Michigan in the next year or so.
Right.
But so McNamara, everyone was pining for him to be the starter. He comes in, he's the future. And now the next guy is up. You basically give Cade McNamara a full season between 2 half seasons to prove to the Michigan fan base that he's the guy. Okay, we want this new shiny toy. I love Michigan, but I have a big problem with the Michigan fan base of there's always the next guy. If you remember, those that are old enough, if you remember from way back when, we had 2 quarterbacks that we didn't, same situation. You had Chad Henne and you had Drew Henson, who ended up playing in the NFL. Both of them did. But you had those guys and they would battle back and forth. And who's better? Michigan, we as fans sometimes have a problem of we always want the next guy, thinking the grass is greener on the other side. Cade McNamara, for all of his potential flaws, okay, he doesn't take shots downfield like JJ does. Correct. But he manages a game better than JJ. And part of that is his experience. But Cade McNamara rode on the strength of a great run game and a stout defense. Is that going to be the same this year? We don't know. But you got to let him go out and play. You got to let him go out and play the game. And Cade McNamara really didn't do anything wrong to lose his job. We were getting blown out by Georgia in the college football playoff. Putting JJ McCarthy in that situation is not going to make things any better. Sure, he made some highlight plays, but Cade McNamara hasn't done anything to me to warrant taking his job away. And from all accounts, Harbaugh has been doing this thing for a couple years now where he doesn't name a starting quarterback, but it's because he wants guys that have to be planned for in multiple different ways by the opposing teams. And you're going to roll with the hot hand one way or the other. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I don't know, but as long the way that they're approaching it, the 2 of them together, they're making it a much easier situation from what we can understand internally in the Michigan locker room. And I have no problem with that. If you've got Cade and he rolls well and he has some strengths, JJ's got some strengths, but after this year, JJ knows it's his team. He's going to have 2 more years to be able to prove to NFL scouts that he can be an NFL quarterback. Why not continue to learn and play and get yourself put into situations by Coach Harbaugh that are going to help you succeed? And then when it's your time, it's an old school mentality, but I'm really kind of appreciative of JJ's not jumping the gun quickly like some of these other quarterbacks do. Oh, I'm not starting, I'm going to transfer. So I really appreciate him sticking in there, sticking to his guns, and saying, okay, even if I split time this year, in the next 2 years, this is my team.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? I agree. And even if like McNamara to me is the starter, he should be the guy. You can always bring in McCarthy for trick plays and bring him in for a little bit of a razzle dazzle here and there. And if you get up by a bunch, bring him in. If you get down by a bunch, bring him in. Make sure that the snaps are going to him so he's not sitting there on the sideline all season cold. But to just come out 3 days ago and say that he's this, like, one guy starting in Hawaii, the other guy starting next week, like, I don't understand that. I think that is going to do something that's going to divide your locker room. And it's really, really going to, there's what, 100 guys on the Michigan football team.
Yep.
So, I mean, look, yeah, go in the locker room and see how many guys are talking to one and who's talking to the other. I mean, there's no way that it's 50-50. And I get that you don't let the players make the decision, but whoever your guys are rallied around, I would imagine that there's enough talent to carry yourself at least into the first 6-7 weeks here and get a true gauge of what the team looks like this year.
And naming the starter week 1, week 2, the two different quarterbacks, not only is that it's Michigan saying that, hey, we're giving each of you an opportunity to show who can be the starting quarterback. And it's more so telling JJ, who's not, like, Cade McNamara is a captain. That's another thing that I think it's got to speak to something. The fact that he's been named one of the captains of the team. But I think naming JJ the starter week 2 sends two messages. One, it sends JJ like, hey, you're going to get a shot to start at least that game. And then however you play late forward, that we're going to roll with that. But the other thing is it's basically telling your first 2 weeks opponents, you're trash, and we're going to start 2 different quarterbacks and going to crush you with the gameplay, the style that we like to play. And it's probably going to be pretty vanilla play calls, which usually is what Harbaugh does in non-conference games against weaker opponents. And it sometimes bites them in the butt a little bit because it's a close game at halftime. It's a close game after 2.5 quarters.
There's got to be a game that sticks in your craw right now. There's got to be a game. What was it, about 12 years ago?
Thankfully, that was the end. Well, I shouldn't say thankfully, because Lloyd Carr took a bunch of heat for that loss for the FCS championship team that year, which was also beating other Power 5 conference schools, if I'm not mistaken. But that was the last year. Lloyd Carr was already kind of ready to retire. The fan base was furious, and then he just retired. And then we got the whole Rich Rod experiment, which,
wow, twice in one show. I'm sorry. We should move on. I'm sorry. I don't want to keep doing that too. That's twice in one show. You had to bring up that gentleman's name.
That's all right.
There's a few teams that are gonna try and get themselves back into contention here. USC Trojans have obviously made a pretty tremendous push, not only to bring in the coach that they feel is the guy. They had Caleb Williams transfer in from Oklahoma as well. They had the receiver come in from Pitt. They've definitely brought some guys in. But we both know from watching sports, like, this isn't a plug and play kind of thing, especially football is not plug and play. You don't have all-star football teams. What is your expectation of USC, and are they, and I mean, I guess don't spoil it because we are going to name our 4. So maybe we'll leave, are they a playoff team, out of the contention here. But what is your expectation of them? And I mean, there is another team in the Pac-12 that is pretty good. So
absolutely.
So we could have a pretty good Pac-12, or at least an opportunity to have a Pac-12 team in it this year. But yeah, so with the new quarterback, with the new coach, couple new weapons, what's your expectation?
There are 4 dates that I have circled on the calendar if I'm USC. And one of them is week 2 against Stanford on the road. Whatever reason, Stanford always has USC's number. Home, away, almost doesn't matter. But that's one of the weeks that I would have circled on my calendar. The second week is the very next week, home against Fresno State, which is a team that's it's kind of a middle conference. I wouldn't quite call them a Cincinnati type team, but from all the counts of things that kind of you hear through, through the media and all that kind of stuff, Fresno State's a team that's got to be on upset alert for that week. Then of course you've got at Utah, which right now is preseason number 7. That's a hot pick for a lot of media members to make the college football playoff. And obviously the very last week against Notre Dame, that's at home. So those 4 weeks I have circled on my calendar. What I look at is the first year for a brand new coach in any college football program, there's always some sort of transition period that has to happen. And usually that means guys don't come in and win 12, 13 games in their first year as a new head coach. But having Caleb Williams transfer in from Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, that I think is a big step. The other guy from Pitt, he was the Bolitnikoff winner. I forget his name right now, but I saw this the other day that he transferred in, and that's already a huge weapon for them. Yeah. I fully expect USC to contend for the Pac-12 championship. But that game against Utah has got a huge red circle around it right now. And that's going to be, I think, one of the deciding factors of who does in fact take the Big 12 or the Pac-12. Yeah,
I mean, you can mark that on your calendar right now. That'll be the 7:30 game on ABC that week. Like that is absolutely going to be the premier matchup, provided everything goes the way that it's supposed to go. Now, what about Texas A&M? Because they're always in the conversation, and that's because their alumni have crazy amounts of money, so they're bringing in lots of recruits. They always have lots of hype around the program. They couldn't get there with Kellen Mond. They had a season with Johnny Manziel. There's been guys sniffing around. Is this an opportunity for them to finally get themselves an SEC title and get themselves into the playoff?
I don't think so. Just because of how strong the SEC, especially the West, usually really is. Mm-hmm. You could make the argument and kind of look at their calendar of games. Week 3, home against Miami, Florida. Miami, I don't think has been super relevant in a long time. And I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but they have in 4 weeks, they have 3 premier games. They're home against Miami, home against Arkansas, and then a couple weeks later, they're at Alabama. Those, I don't think they're going to, I think they'll have at least 2 or 3 losses, I think, depending on how everything shakes out. LSU is another game at the very end of the season. What's Brian Kelly going to do there? I don't think they're going to have a great season in that transition year. But here's what stands out to me. We always talk about ever since the 2020 COVID year when Texas A&M went 9-1, and they made the Orange Bowl. They were postseason number 4. The rest of the full seasons, Texas A&M went 9-4, 8-5, and 8-4. So outside of that 1 year of 9-1, that doesn't give me a ton of confidence that they're going to all of a sudden go from an 8-4 team to be 12-0, 11-1. Is it possible? Absolutely. They've got great home field advantage. You mentioned the boosters. They have one of the highest budgets in college football. It's astounding what they do in the state of Texas between Texas Austin and Texas A&M.
Amazing fan base. Like if you watch one of those games, it's unreal.
Yeah, absolutely. But I look at their schedule. I would not be surprised to see them. Potentially lose a game against Arkansas, who's got a lot of hype around them this year. Miami, and John, week 3 is going to be the determination for A&M. It's also going to be a big determination for Miami, Florida. Are they actually the real deal? They haven't been for a long time, for 20 years, but I think that's going to be a big indication for where both of those programs are. I think Texas A&M wins that one. I wouldn't be surprised if they win fairly easily at home. That's might surprise a few people, but if they go into Alabama undefeated, I will feel much, much more confident that even if they lose that game, that they could win out and they could sneak into the playoff as a number 4, because they obviously wouldn't make the SEC championship game unless Alabama has some really wild, like fall flat on your face type season, which I don't think they will with just kind of how their program's set up.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's probably it's probably time for us to unveil our predictions for what the college football playoff is going to look like. And I don't. Which order do you want to go in? Do you want me to go first, or do you want to?
You can go first.
Okay, so right off the hop, there's no way that I'm willing to leave Georgia out. Defending champion, they're bringing the guys back. They're gonna be just as strong, if not as good, if not better. I'm fully confident in Georgia's ability to recruit a running back. Doesn't matter who gets drafted. They always seem to have a running back that's going in the first or second round. So whoever they pluck out of the sky is going to be the guy there, and he's probably going to rush for 1,600 yards. No doubt about it in my mind. So I'll roll with them. Second, I'm going to take a bounce back pick, and I say bounce back after a 10-win season, which was apparently a down season for them. And that's the Clemson Tigers. It is time. Dabo's going to make sure that the guys are ready to play. They're always going to be dialed in. And there's a big chip on the shoulder because they were kind of being left out. The ACC is, exactly. The ACC is fantastic this year. NC State's going to be good. Pittsburgh is good. John, help me out. I'm missing one too. There's another team that's strong in the ACC this year.
He was saying NC State, which that's a team that I've seen a few different places as being a sleeper this year.
Yeah, I think NC State has a chance to be like a New Year's Six kind of team. They're not going to be in contention for the playoff, I don't think, but they have a strong enough offense. Their quarterback is a potential first overall pick coming up in this year's draft. He's going to be Clemson's going to play a good enough schedule, and they're going to play a good enough. Sorry, I was just seeing what John's. Yeah, they're going to play a good enough schedule, and they're definitely going to have the ability to get there. I think that Dabo's been around the block long enough. Alungale is definitely going to take a step forward. That's a 5-star prospect. He's a monster. I actually I know one of the guys on the Clemson football team, and he says that they're ready to roll, and I take his word for it pretty strongly. So I'm going to definitely stick with them and put them in there. After that, now we're looking at some teams. You just never know what's going to happen next. We're looking at Ohio State. I believe I put in there at number 3. I texted this to you about 5-6 hours ago, Craig. So I'm using my memory. I believe Ohio State was. Yeah, okay. I believe Ohio State was was my third team. Hard to go against Ryan Day. I think that they're going to bounce back again. With that loss to Michigan is not going to sit well with the Ohio State players. CJ Stroud is a great quarterback. He's going to be a top 5 pick. It makes me want to vomit to say that Ohio State is going to probably run the table in the Big Ten, but I think that that's going to happen. And then my fourth, my sneak in, because it'd be really easy for me to just say Alabama right now, right? Like that would be the easy pick. I'm not into easy picks, so I'm going to say Utah because Cameron Rising I believe, can lead the team as many times downfield as they want. The Utah defense is going to need to step up and keep teams under 30 points. If they can keep teams under 30 points, Utah has a great chance to go undefeated. I don't know what a line would look like right now if they were playing USC, but I would think that Utah would be favored in that by at least 3 points. I would be very, very confident putting money behind Utah to beat USC right now. And I think because of all those wins and their ability to stack in a weaker bottom end of that conference, it's going to be able to get them in there.
Yeah, those are the picks. See them right there. Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, Utah. Yeah, Utah is an interesting one because of how their schedule looks. They've got their first game, I believe, is against Florida, and I think it's at Florida, if I'm not mistaken. So that already week 1 is going to be a very, very unique game to be on the lookout for. I'm kind of in the same boat as far as picks go, but I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. Not really. I mean, come on. I was having this conversation in one of our chats. I think it was in one of our group chats that we have. But if you look from top to bottom, we talk about how the Utahs might sneak in. You know, what's USC going to do? What's Texas A&M going to do? Is NC State going to be a sleeper in the ACC? Boil it all the way down. Every year, there are legit 2, maybe 3 teams that actually have a shot at winning a national championship. Looking at the schedule, Alabama doesn't have a difficult game on their schedule outside of Texas A&M. They really don't. At Arkansas might be tough. At Texas, Texas isn't Texas anymore. The Iron Bowl is always an interesting game. But I think Bama runs the table. They go undefeated. They're going to be the number 1 seed. That means they have to play most likely Georgia again in the SEC championship game. And based on what Georgia's schedule looks like, I don't see any losses on their schedule either. They don't have any hard SEC road games at all. Their biggest game is the first week against Oregon.
Right.
That's their biggest game. If I think they come out, they win, so they're only going to have 1 loss. They'll probably be number 3.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you out. John Suggs has been going off a lot about Oregon. Bo Nix does not make you a great team. I can assure you of that. Ask Auburn fans. Bo Nix does not make you a great team. But keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good. As much as it pains me to say it, I think the other team that makes the college football playoff will probably be Ohio State. I think Michigan has a very generous schedule this year, but there are trap games in there. Mm-hmm. There's the game against Michigan State. You can always throw records out the window. We've seen that in that rivalry over the past couple of years. Throw records out the window. But even if Michigan does manage to walk into Ohio Stadium undefeated, Ohio State, you said it earlier, they've got a vendetta this year to get back to where they believe they should be. And CJ Stroud is another big talent quarterback that is going to look good in that offense, but further than that, jury's out. Ohio State hasn't produced a good quarterback ever. Quote me on that.
Yeah.
ever. In the NFL, ever.
Yeah.
So,
the only thing that I feel sorry for in this Ohio State thing is for Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has to go in there week 1, brand new coach, brand new quarterback. That one's going to be a tough one. It's going to make Ohio State look like absolute world beaters. But I can tell you this is a down year for Notre Dame. But keep going on your thing. You didn't cut me off for mine. I don't know why I keep cutting you off on yours.
Notre Dame doesn't have a chance. They're going to lose minimum 3 games, minimum, I think, this year. Even with that, I do think it'd be interesting to point to John's talk here about Oregon, Vandy over Bama. Yeah.
All right.
If that happens, yeah, I won't say it on air, but
John's drinking bourbon.
John's having what you were having last weekend.
Yeah. It's good, right, John?
Yeah, it's got to taste good. I think USC and Utah make pushes, but I think those guys end up canceling each other out in the college football playoff. Race. I think they end up canceling each other out because they're going to have to play each other in the Pac-12 championship game, and depending on whose season is better, if they're both 10-11 win teams, you probably won't have a 2-loss team unless it's an SEC team in the playoff. Right. So that means my number 4 pick is most likely, I think it's most likely going to be Clemson, because of a lot of the points that you made earlier and the fact that looking over their schedule, it is also a pretty cake schedule. They're at Wake Forest, which will give them fits, I think. This year, they're taking more steps forward. NC State is that sleeper team, and that'll be an interesting game to watch. Notre Dame is also on the schedule for Clemson. They have a hard road, but I haven't really seen a Dabo team take too many hits many years in a row. So that's you kind of have to play into that as well. DJ is probably going to have a step forward, like you mentioned, this year. I see him. He's just got to get better at his decision making, and I think that comes with some more experience and some proper coaching. But that's probably what I would have. 1, 2, 3, 4. Clemson. I would have Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. Now, the homer in me would love to see Michigan up there at number 3.
Right.
But I think Michigan does have some question marks on the defense, but on the offensive end, they're going to be a powerhouse. I think it's going to be a very exciting game, very exciting scene to watch. But yeah, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson.
Yeah, and I got a couple of minutes before I ride off into the sunset and go draft myself a fantasy championship. But John asked a question about Baylor, and I think it's an important one. And I think the answer that I will give you about Baylor is, why are people so high on Baylor? It's because people want Texas to be good. And if Texas beats Baylor and everyone says Baylor is good, then that is going to overinflate the idea of what Texas is. The media outlets really, really need Texas football to do well, especially Texas football needs to do well entering the SEC coming up here soon. So I think that they're doing everything that they can to hype up a Big 12 team. This is probably a down year for Oklahoma with all the change that they're having. A down year for them is probably going to be 9 or 10 wins, but they're not going to be a team sniffing around what we're talking about. But to me, like, the Baylor hype train is all fugazi, and it's all out there just to try and overinflate resumes of other people.
Yeah, there's always that conference, and Big 12 tries to throw that in there every year. Is it Oklahoma? Is Texas back? Baylor? All those schools get thrown in there. But kind of looking at all those top schools, if you think about it, I don't think any Big 12 team, maybe Oklahoma once, has made the college football playoff, and that conference has really taken a turn. And with the voting committee, if there's a 1-loss Big 12 team versus a 1-loss SEC team, or like a Georgia Bama situation where both are undefeated, one loses in the SEC title game, are you going to put a 1-loss SEC versus a 1-loss uncontested Big 12 championship team? I think they would pick the SEC team, because you got to look at we talked about this last week about the Big Ten's media deal, and the amount of eyeballs that would get glued to the TV when the Big 12 or when the Big 10 is good and when the SEC is good. those are the top two most watched conferences in the country. So obviously they're going to pick teams from those conferences that are going to help get more eyeballs to the college football playoff.
Right. Well, I can assure you that starting Thursday, my eyeballs will be peeled on every single college game that I can get my eyes on, because I am so excited for meaningful football to be back. The preseason is officially over for the NFL. It doesn't seem like there was any major injuries, but I can leave you with that. I'm gonna go right off into the sunset, win us a fantasy championship. But Craig, we almost made it out of block one. So congratulations to us.
We spent an hour talking about the first topic.
Yeah. So next week we'll pick it up again, and I'll check in with you, and maybe next week we can get into block two before the first hour's over.
Yeah, we'll have that more better separated here. We get some good plugs in our commercials and stuff. We can get those thrown in there. Sorry to the sponsors. We didn't have a chance to do those tonight.
Yeah, too much college football. But I appreciate it, Craig, and we'll chat soon.
All right, thanks, Shane, and we'll see you next week. All right, welcome back to just me for the rest of the way. Let me know in the comments kind of some stuff about NFL, MLB. I want to talk a little bit about those, and of course the LIV Golf situation that has been ever developing. And that's kind of one thing that I wanted to kind of turn the show a little bit about here is the LIV Golf situation. So if you haven't noticed over the last week or so, there have been 11 players that filed an antitrust lawsuit against the PGA that have defected to LIV Golf, and then of course were banned by the PGA. And since the allegations, all that stuff came out, like they signed the antitrust lawsuit and they started pushing that forward. More players have now been brought out since now the FedEx Championship is over. Rory McIlroy, another championship today for him, that happened just this afternoon. So congratulations to him. But there are 11 players on that. And since now it's gotten so much more momentum, LIV Golf themselves are now joining the antitrust lawsuit. And in that, there's some corresponding moves. A few people have left the lawsuit. And you got to imagine that's probably because they want to try to get back into the PGA. They're not big names that you would really know. However, 7 names remain that are still on that lawsuit. Phil Mickelson, Bryson DeChambeau, Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford, Matt Jones, Ian Poulter, and Peter Eichheim. But the lawsuit alleges that PGA Tour players who were suspended have been denied their rights to compete due to a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. And I kind of wanted to point this out, that to me, this is the PGA they're scared. They're 100% scared that more players are going to leave for LIV Golf. And we've talked about it now almost every week on this show about the impact that LIV Golf is having on PGA. Players are leaving for an easier schedule. They're leaving for a better payday. And if you've noticed, I've recently downloaded the ESPN app again. And if you've noticed now, they've been putting on their app the notifications that you get for golf tournaments, if that's something that you're into. They've actually been starting to put on there the purse of how much a player is going to win for winning that tournament. They've never done that before. Why did they start now? Because LIV Golf is starting to pay players more from top to bottom. They're starting to pay them more from top to bottom. And now that more players are leaving the PGA to go to LIV, now the competition's only going to get better. It's only going to get much better. So I think that's really a key factor here, that LIV has, as John puts it, they have unlimited amount of money not only to stay in the lawsuit and continue to play it out. And they've been really taking a great approach to how they distribute and take care of that. I would not be surprised if somebody like a big content streaming option like an Amazon or something swoops in and takes Live Golf, and you're able to kind of stream those now because you can watch them free on YouTube. You don't have to even PGA Tour events. You have them on CBS. Well, if you don't have a cable package, you can't watch them. We don't have cable in our house, so I have to watch a lot of my sporting events through other channels, other ways to watch them. So I'm really curious to hear what everybody's thoughts are on the Live Golf situation. And John makes a good point here. Watch Adidas and other endorsements follow suit when viewers leave PGA. I don't think viewers are going to leave PGA, but I agree with more people are going to start paying attention to Live Golf, especially as their base grows and as they're able to kind of grow that with their sponsorships, and the more money that comes into it, and the more that big deal with, say, like an Amazon that comes in and they're trying to get into sports, into the sports realm, especially with the NFL. But that would be a big push in the right direction for Live Golf to kind of make a big dent into the PGA. Now, the PGA has come out and they've been trying to catch that younger audience a little bit. Earlier this week, I think it was on Front Office Sports, their account on Twitter, they released this joint project between the PGA, Tiger Woods, and Rory McIlroy, where they're going to do this digital, it's going to be this competition essentially, where it's a team-based competition. There's going to be a lot of virtual stuff all involved, and it's going to be like par 3 competitions and things of that nature, which makes it sound really enticing. But with all the things they want to do, they want to make it very fan friendly, very fan interactive. But my question is going to be, if you're making this move, but you're saying that Live Golf is not competition, you're doing exactly what needs to be done for the game of golf. They're starting to implement these things to get more of the casual fans to tune in and watch and pay attention to golf. That doesn't happen if Live Golf doesn't exist. It just doesn't happen. My big question mark for that competition is going to be, how much are they going to be paying? Because Live Golf does that. They do the individual competitions for their weekend tournaments, but there's also team-based incentives and competitions as well, that more guys can essentially get money out of that pot. And as that base grows, the money pot grows. And I would be very interested, John, to see that. How is that pot going to grow as some of these bigger sponsorships come up, as Live Golf enters its first year anniversary, second year, third year, and they continue to, there's a lot of great golf courses that they haven't even touched yet to have events at. So imagine, and some of those aren't even affiliated with PGA or anything of those, and of anything like that. So that would be very interesting if they start getting more, making it more of a fan interactive situation, and that, I think that'll be a big indicator of where Live Golf goes from here. And year 3, when TV channels pick it up, watch out. I don't even think it's year 3. I think with the momentum that they currently have, if they can get a few more big names, there was the recent Open champion, Cameron Smith. He's been rumored to now be the next person to jump ship to go to Live Golf. And now we were going to add that in the show, but I think it just came out from ESPN that he has said that he's staying with PGA. But because since that rumor came out, I think he's making a stand one way or the other. But that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. This lawsuit, are they gonna win this case and be able to allow guys to still compete in like Ryder Cups and some of these the FedEx Championship and things of that nature? I would love to see it. The two entities of PGA and LIV Golf kind of work together. You can honestly, it's just like having it would be super wild, but it'd be like having, you see, like in wrestling, AEW and Impact. Those two, they cross promote. You'll never see that with like the WWE and AEW. But so that's kind of the situation that we're in, is it's growing these two. It's growing these two together. I would love to see guys that are involved with LIV and PGA compete against each other, in some of these joint events, but I understand how they can't. But that's kind of what this antitrust lawsuit's all about, is these guys that are being now banned from PGA events or others events. They're getting blackballed because they're deciding to take a step in a different direction that pays them more for essentially less strain and travel on your body. You can be with your family more and all those different things. So I don't blame players for doing it. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. All right, we're going to round out the show a little bit with some Major League Baseball and kind of shift gears to close out the show for the last few minutes. And we're in the final leg of the Major League Baseball season. And one of the big stories recently has been the resurgence of Albert Pujols, the 42-year-old designated hitter who, for some reason, when he is in St. Louis, he turns back into the machine that he was his first go-round. I just remember a few years ago when he's making these rounds and he's trying to, St. Louis says, hey, you're not really Albert Pujols anymore. We're going to part ways, or we don't want to pay you what you want to get paid. And then you see him really struggle in some of these other places. The Angels is a great example. Struggled there mightily, and he actually started showing his age. But then when he gets back to St. Louis, he turns back into the monster machine that he was for so many years. And right now he's chasing 700 home runs. He's sitting at 693 home runs, and he could become the fourth player ever to hit 700, which would be such a huge milestone. He's been kind of slowly chipping away at it, but the other three, Barry Bonds, very lightning rod of a figure, Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth. That's some elite company. And I think with needing only 7 home runs to get there, he's had 7 home runs in the last 10 game span, I believe it was, up until this last week. But I think that pace, there's no way that somebody at his age could keep that pace. But they're not trying to play him every day, and that's going to help maintain his health, and it's going to help him out a lot more. I think he does it. He'll end up doing it this year, and even if he doesn't do it this year, I think if he even doesn't do it this year, he'll stick around long enough to do it next year, and then he'll just retire. But yeah, absolutely. He's getting to that point where people are going to start walking him again all the time. Can you imagine Albert Pujols pinch hitting in like the 7th inning? Pinch hitting in the 7th inning, and he walks up to the plate and they just intentionally walk him. And he's sitting at 699. That's like when Miguel Cabrera was crowding 3,000 home runs. When he's crowding 3,000 hits. Played against the Yankees intentionally walked Miguel Cabrera when he was at, I think, 2,999. And man, they rained down boos on them so so much. He ended up getting it. He ended up getting against the Rockies not too long after. But it's kind of what that situation would feel like, wouldn't it? If it's 699 and Pujols is pinch hitting, and then whoever's there, they walk him. But I think that would cap off such an amazing career. He's one of the best hitters that we've seen in this generation. As much as I don't like to say that because the Cardinals beat the Tigers in a World Series, but he's him and Miguel Cabrera are two of the best hitters that we've seen in our generation, and we won't see hitters like that again. I really don't think so. The way that load management and everything works nowadays, and guys don't play as many years or play as many games as these guys do now. But when Albert Pujols retires, we're witnessing history play out right now. We're witnessing history play out right now. But kind of look around the rest of the wild card race here is something that we were planning on talking about here. This wild card race that we have in Major League Baseball right now is insane. You've got Seattle, who's trying to make the playoffs for the first time since 2001. It's the longest playoff drought in North American sports history. And you've got that combination. You've got that combination of Julio Rodriguez, who's been a sensational player as a rookie. All-star team, shines at the home run derby, probably winning AL Rookie of the Year. You know, you could also argue somebody like Adley Rutschman is in that conversation. But that team, and they go out and get Luis Castillo, you know, Robbie Ray's starting, you know, finally looking better. They've got some guys that are actually that are playing more consistent. And that huge win streak didn't hurt. But 6-4 in their last 10. And that's going to be hard. That's if they but I think they make the playoffs. Is kind of what I'm getting to here, because if you look at the AL East, and I know John, Tampa Bay had really fallen apart for a little while. They are 7-3 in their last 10. They're still a game and a half ahead of Seattle here. But look at the rest of the teams that are on this list. Now, these are teams that are within 10 games of the wild card spot. Everybody else kind of left off this list. But Toronto is right there. Toronto's right there. You've got Baltimore a game and a half back of being in that wild card spot. Minnesota, but I think Minnesota's going to win the AL Central, so they'll be out of there. The White Sox have been so interesting to watch. Tony La Russa has made so many head scratching moves, and being a Tigers fan, it's kind of fun to watch that. Fun to watch the White Sox fall apart. But the White Sox, I don't think they're going to do enough to make the playoffs. They've been kind of falling apart. Eloy Jimenez, I believe, is out for the year now, if I remember correctly, seeing over the last week. Boston's been a disaster. I don't think they're going to be able to pull it together fast enough to be able to make the playoffs. John's question here, thoughts on Seattle giving Julio that big of a contract at his age? Agree locking him up, but not sure if I would have done that and gave 10 years. So I'm actually writing an article about this for a website called Overtime Heroics. That'll be out fairly soon. Not today, probably tomorrow. Outlining this contract, because you see those numbers and it pops out and you're like, oh, that's a 12, 14-year contract. But then being able to dig a little deeper into his contract, it's really an 8-year contract. Because once 2028 comes around, the team has a club option to give him another extension to pick up. And it's all based on his MVP voting. Like if he gets, I think it's 0 to 1 MVP votes, his contract could be X. 2 to 4 votes, he gets another, it's another mark. So if you really he maxes it out, and I think that maxes out at 2 AL MVP wins. That would be phenomenal. Think about that. To win 2 AL MVPs in a span of 6 years, that puts you in some rare company already. But his contract, once they get to 2028, it's really an 8-year contract. And then it's dependent upon his performance in those 8 years of how the rest of the extension is going to work. Say hypothetically the Seattle Mariners decline his option. They decline that option. If that is declined, then he has a player option for 5 years and $90 million that kicks in if he so chooses. But if he declines that, he's going to hit free agency at 30 years old, which is another massive payday for a player of his caliber. And he's only a rookie. You got to imagine he's going to continue to progress. So my thoughts on Seattle giving him that contract, if Julio Rodriguez becomes the player that a lot of people are now thinking and expecting him to become, this is going to be one of the biggest contract steals in Major League Baseball history. His base salary over these 7 years is $18 million base salary. Now, I had to look this up because I was very curious of where that puts him else against other players. The highest played position player is Anthony Rendon, making $36 million. Julio Rodriguez would only be making $18 million base salary without incentives per year during the first 7-8 years of this contract. That puts him in the top 50, right around that top 50 paid players, pitchers and position players in Major League Baseball. That's a steal of a contract, especially if the guy ends up winning an MVP or 2, or, he has those incentives. It's a very aggressive contract for Julio Rodriguez. It's got a lot of potential to be the highest paid contract at $470 million, but that means everything has to hit. And if everything doesn't hit, it won't even get near that amount. He's got a lot of guaranteed money, but I think it will be one of the biggest steals in Major League Baseball contract history if Julio Rodriguez becomes the player that people are thinking he's going to be. But yeah, that article's going to come out in Overtime Heroics very soon. And it's a very interesting reading over. I thought it was a very interesting read. But all right, let's kind of move on. Last part here, we're going to talk about a little bit of NL wild card. And I know, John, you already made the comment in here, Braves versus Cards is 2 teams to watch this week. But you look at, I think it was, were they on last night? Braves and Cards, I think, were on last night. I caught a little bit while I was at work. That was a hell of a game to watch. Hell of a game to watch. But here's the wild card standings for the NL. You got Atlanta's 9.5 ahead of Philadelphia, who's sitting there in the second spot. San Diego is a team that I've really been shocked of how poorly they've played since they traded for Juan Soto. And you can see here that they've been 5-5 in their last 10. The Padres, Milwaukee hasn't been playing well in their last 10 games. San Francisco's kind of lost their way out of it at this point, being 2-8 in their last 10, and they're already 7.5 games back. So all those, basically anybody beyond the Milwaukee Brewers don't really have much of a chance here to make the NL wild card. So I think this race is going to be a lot easier to pay attention to than the AL for sure. But yeah, you mentioned, John, that game last night, the Braves walked the guy to lose the game. That's such a horrible way to lose. Such a horrible, you hate that when you've got your closer out there. You've got your closer out there, a guy that guy you really want, you want him out there, and you walk him to end the game. That's just a horrible way to go out. But I'd love to hear everybody's comments here. I think I saw one earlier. I'm just going to answer some questions for a few minutes here that were thrown in. I think this one was NFL related. Thoughts on my Lions today? Struggled to get to the red zone till the last quarter. How I look at the Lions for this game, it's still preseason. It was 16-3 going into the fourth quarter on the road at Pittsburgh. A lot of the starters played, minus Jared Goff, the obviously the starting quarterback going into the season. I think the offense will be okay. I'm not really worried too much about them, especially when Jameson Williams gets healthier. You're hoping that one of the best graded offensive lines from last year by Pro Football Focus shows up again this year. The receiving core can play pretty well. DJ Chark, hopefully he has a bounce back year, becomes a red zone threat. Hawkinson's playing for a potential extension. So is Jared Goff. Those guys really need to pick it up. So I'm not too concerned about the offense, especially the way they were playing down the stretch last year. I think they'll take a pretty big step forward. The defense is what kind of worries me. They didn't make a ton of changes on the defense. Obviously, getting some of those guys on the defensive line helps big time, i.e. Aiden Hutchinson, but he's not the only guy there. One of the biggest concerns I have for the Detroit Lions this year on the defense is the linebacking core and the secondary. Just because the fact that you have, if those of you that kind of watch Hard Knocks, you've been watching a lot of Malcolm Rodriguez. Malcolm Rodriguez is a 6th round draft pick from Oklahoma State. Now, I watched him when he was at Oklahoma State, and he's a stud. But the fact that he fell all the way to the 6th round because he's quote unquote undersized, but he walks into Detroit, and within the first few weeks of training camp, he's being talked about as one of the starters. Now, I think that's huge kudos to him, and he might end up being a fantastic player in his career for the Lions, but I think that's more of a detriment to the current linebacking core. They haven't really made a lot of moves that would give you a whole lot of confidence. And then secondary, Jeff Okudah's got to show up. He's got to stay healthy, but he's got to prove that he was worth the draft pick of number 3 overall that Quintricia made a few years ago. Make all the arguments you want about who should have been picked and what direction they should have went. The fact is that Jeff Okudah was picked. Been hurt a lot the last couple years. He's not the same Jeff Okudah that played in Columbus. He's got to step up big time. And if he can step up big time, he can help anchor the corner spot. And I think it becomes a much better defense if he can be the lockdown corner that he was expected to be coming out of college. Not really a question, more of a comment. John Suggs here in the chat talking about the Padres, said the trade was horrible. Picking up the extra players didn't move the needle for me to pass the Dodgers. And the pitch of this era, his ERA, Josh Hader. Yeah. Josh Hader, the fact that the Brewers gave him up, everyone was like, wow, why would they give up Josh Hader even though he had been kind of struggling? He already had an 11 ERA during the the month of June for Milwaukee. So the fact that he's still not performing well is I think it's kind of an indicator of he may be starting to decline. But yeah, he's been one of the reasons why that Padres team has just not been able to kind of stay in that playoff race. When that pick was, or I should, when that trade was made and the move was made for Soto, they're throwing all their chips in to try to compete with the Dodgers. And clearly that's not happening. And in the NFL, Baltimore got a stud from Oregon as undrafted QB Anthony Brown. Seattle and the Vikings go after him. Baltimore's going to be an interesting scenario this year. We did episode 1 a few weeks ago. We talked about the NFC North. So if you want to check that out, it's going to be on the YouTube page for All Sports All Plays Sports Network. But yeah, we kind of talked a little bit about all the teams in the NFL, I should say, and the AFC North, and kind of how we felt they would come out. But I appreciate everyone's comments, the questions. As always, make sure you tune in. All Sports All Plays Network on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow wherever you watch All Sports All Plays, the weekly wrap-up show here on the All Sports All Plays Network. Coming up this week, I kind of made an announcement on my Facebook. I'm actually going to be joining the morning show weekdays, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. on all the same platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. I'll be joining a lot of the guys on that morning show, kicking that off tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. every weekday, Monday through Friday, and then followed by the afternoon blitz, which is 1 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, and then Easy Money, the sports betting show, 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, every weekday here on the All Sports All Plays Network. It's been a lot of fun. Even the last few minutes here, we talked a lot of college football, but football season is back. Enjoy, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the All Sports All Plays weekly wrap-up show. Have a great week, everyone.
All Sports All Plays. All Sports All Plays. All Sports All Plays. 365, we're making a plays. We're talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All Sports All Plays.